The most important meal of the day is a scam? Hey everyone, I'm Abbey Sharp. Welcome to Abby's Kitchen. Until very recently, we've all just kind of accepted this idea that breakfast was the most important meal of the day, and skipping it was going to cause all sorts of calamities to ensue. That was until intermittent fasting really hit the mainstream in the 2010s, and everything we knew about our favorite meal of the day was questioned. So is breakfast still the day's darling, or should we be skipping it to improve our health? We've got a lot of morning tea to spill here, but first of all, don't forget to subscribe if you are not already, and check out my description for my free ebooks and a link to a great breakfast edition, my new probiotic protein powder, New Theory. Okay, let's take a quick breather and talk about today's sponsor, Lumino. So everyone who knows me, especially my poor dental hygienist, knows that I have the most sensitive teeth of life. And I largely chalk that up to getting like a Zoom whitening at 16 years old and it being more painful than childbirth. That said, I drink a lot of coffee and my teeth are super stained, so I would be lying if I said I wasn't dying to whiten them again. So I was very excited when Lumino reached out because they offer safe whitening solutions without the sensitivity. So instead of typical peroxide, their whitening strips are made of dead sea salt, coconut, and lemon peel oils, which whiten teeth a lot more gently, but just as effectively as peroxide strips. I also love their Lumino electric toothbrush, which has super soft, flexible bristles that deep clean without the pain. And look how gorgeous these are. Honestly, as a super sensitive teeth girly, I am a huge fan of the whole line, including the mouthwash and toothpaste. My kids are particularly obsessed with the unicorn rainbow variety because when you are 4 and 6 years old, basically anything rainbow is a big thumbs up. And right now, Lumino whitening strips are available on Amazon for $5 off. So if you're looking to brighten your smile without the gnawing sensitivity and nerve pain, definitely check out my description for the link. All right, let's start with a wee little history lesson. So this may not come as a surprise to you, but a lot of the health-related messaging surrounding the significance of breakfast being like its own unique magical meal didn't actually start with hard research. That actually did come later, but it more likely came from good marketing. Once upon a time, the first meal of the day was really no different than any other. Usually consisted of some leftovers, maybe some eggs or cured meats from a family's own farm. But during the Industrial Revolution, we saw a departure from farm labor to factories and offices, which eliminated the need for a big, hearty meal. This was also around the time when Seventh-day Adventist followers started to open up sanitariums to introduce disciples to vegetarian diets, and wheat specifically was kind of thought to be some kind of mystical, magical ingredient to counter all that ailed you. Enter John Harvey Kellogg's and his invention, cornflakes. So Kellogg's believed that eating bland grain-based foods like cornflakes would cure men of the sinful desire to masturbate. Cornflakes. Yeah, like you are never gonna think of that cereal the same way again. But anyway, this is really the first seed that was planted that breakfast was the most important meal of the day. If you didn't have your morning wheat bran, you're apparently gonna go straight to hell.
Welcome to hell, mother.
Soon after, in the 40s, the government started to fortify breakfast cereals to include important nutrients, which kind of just doubled down on this message of cereal being super duper healthy. But it wasn't just the cereal giants trying to capitalize on the Good Morning marketing campaign. Soon after, we met the infamous PR agent and nephew of Sigmund Freud, Edward Bernays. Questionable mustache aside, Bernays wanted to help promote his company's bacon, so he got one single doctor that he knew to say that bacon and eggs were healthier than cereal, which then prompted 5,000 other doctors to sign a petition. Somehow, some way, he got this petition published in the media, masquerading as like legitimate scientific research, which is why he's often being called out as a marketing mastermind who transformed humanity into mindless, thoughtless consumers. Regardless Regardless, the low carb versus low fat breakfast trends have basically ping-ponged in each direction ever since. But what has remained is this idea that breakfast is unique and far superior to lunch and dinner. So what does the research say? Well, first of all, I think it's really important that we try to quantify important. Important to you could mean that breakfast is like your favorite meal of the day because you like pancakes or eggs or yogurt instead of sandwiches or soup. And I mean, that's a pretty solid argument right there. But generally speaking, when people are debating over eating breakfast or skipping it a la intermittent fasting, they're talking about optimizing health. Weight loss, energy, mood, metabolism, and general nutrition. So we're gonna do a little myth busting here to help you determine the most optimal meal pattern for your goals. Okay, first up, metabolism. A lot of the pro-breakfast messages of my generation really revolved around this idea that eating the moment you open your eyes will jumpstart your metabolism. By this logic, intermittent fasting, or even just delaying breakfast a few hours to work up a solid appetite, would slow your fat-burning machine down and cause you to store fat. Is this evidence-based? Not really. If skipping breakfast creates a deficit that results in weight loss, then yes, you will naturally see a small decline in resting metabolic rate. But when weight loss is equalized, research suggests that there really is no difference in resting metabolic rate in those who eat breakfast and those who don't. But speaking of weight loss, is breakfast the key to a healthy weight? This is where it gets a little more complicated. So observational research consistently shows that breakfast skipping is linked to a higher risk of obesity. But observational studies don't often tell the whole picture. Is skipping breakfast inherently increasing people's body weight by maybe encouraging people to binge on less healthy foods at lunch? Or are larger body people just more likely to skip breakfast related to some other mediating factor like socioeconomic status, accessibility, crash dieting, late night eating, appetite control, etc.? When we look at actual randomized control trials, the case for breakfast is a little less clear. If you recall from my videos on intermittent fasting, skipping breakfast or fasting isn't like a magical solution when it comes to weight loss. We just tend to eat fewer calories when we miss a meal, which creates a calorie deficit, which then leads to weight loss over time. So for some people, skipping breakfast when they otherwise would be eating means fewer total calories consumed in the day. In contrast, adding in a breakfast when you're not used to eating breakfast can result in added calories that don't get fully compensated for later on. It also appears from the greater body of evidence that hunger and satiety hormones are not that different between breakfast eaters and skippers. So as long as you're sticking to your usual routine and responding to your natural hunger patterns, one's appetite control is generally unaltered. But the individuality here explains why intermittent fasting diets sometimes result in weight loss, sometimes result in weight staying the same, and sometimes result in weight gain. While most people will create a calorie deficit when they skip breakfast, some people will just feel so physically or emotionally deprived if they skip their morning meal that they overdo it on a higher calorie lunch and snacks. So clearly, individual responses will vary, which is why I don't think it's a good idea to push yourself against your natural grain. Bottom line, if weight loss is your goal, skipping breakfast doesn't appear to hamper your results by slowing your metabolism down. And in many cases, it might even help to support weight loss by creating a calorie deficit. The caveat, of course, is that this can backfire in some folks. Next, let's talk about exercise. So the whole fasted or fed workout is consistently one of the most prolific arguments in the fitness community. But what does the research say? Well, first of all, optimal athletics aside, studies show that people who skip breakfast tend to compensate by slightly reducing their natural physical activity the rest of the day. This is really just one of many compensatory mechanisms that your body kind of throws into high gear when its set point weight is being threatened. But whether or not exercise performance benefits or suffers from skipping breakfast kind of comes down to your goal. If we're talking about like a standard cardio session, one 2018 meta-analysis found no differences in exercise performance when workouts lasted less than an hour. But if you're like training hard for a marathon or doing much longer runs or rides, you'll likely have better outcomes with some fuel on board. Though research on this is also still mounting. Now, if we're talking strength training, research also suggests that training fasted doesn't necessarily impact your gains, assuming that you're eating enough, period. And while there also doesn't seem to be any huge detriment to fasted exercise, there also isn't a real benefit either. A lot of fasting proponents will point to this meta-analysis that suggested that fasted cardio would offer greater fat burning potential. But this is purely an acute effect. Researchers found that this doesn't affect body composition or actual fat loss over time, so it's essentially meaningless from a weight loss standpoint. Bottom line, some people feel that having breakfast gives them the energy to push their training harder, and some people find that eating before training makes them feel sluggish, crampy, or nauseous. This is highly individual and will ultimately depend on what you're eating, when you're eating, how you're training, and your total calorie intake the rest of the day. So for the most part, this is kind of like 6 in one, half a dozen in the other. The only big caution I have to make is for women who are exercising fasted in a calorie deficit. So I talked about this in a lot more detail in my video on intermittent fasting for women right here, and it is very complicated science, so definitely watch that video if you want a full explainer. But in short, exercising in a fasted state while also in a calorie deficit does put women specifically at a higher risk of low energy availability. And this can potentially cause hormonal dysregulation by throwing off reproductive hormones and stress hormones like cortisol alike. So this is one scenario where breakfast would be definitely advised. Next, let's talk about cognitive performance and mood. So since the beginning of time, science has shown that eating breakfast significantly improves young students' school performance. Kids who eat breakfast score significantly higher in math, spelling, and reading than those who don't. They often have better brain function, memory, and attention, and they may even deal better with bouts of frustration. And to any parent, this just makes sense. When your kid is hungry, they're kind of crazy. They're not very nice. They're in meltdown city. But eating breakfast, and really any other meal, helps to regulate blood sugars, which results in more stable behavior and cognitive capacity. Kids' brains are also working like a mile a minute while their bodies are actively growing, so feeding them regularly just makes sense. But what about adults? Not unlike kids, a lot of studies have found that participants who eat breakfast score better on cognitive performance, recognition memory, and mood compared to those who skipped it. But this perk also has some caveats, namely the type of breakfast and the portion size. So one study gave participants no breakfast, a small 10-gram bowl of cornflakes, or a larger 50-gram bowl of cornflakes. So basically just straight up naked carbs to elicit a blood sugar response. While there wasn't a big difference in mood early on in the morning, by late morning, eating a large bowl of cornflakes caused blood sugars to tank, making the breakfast eaters ultimately more irritable and moody. Thankfully, having a snack helped to kind of bump their emotional state back up beyond that what was seen in those who skipped breakfast. So what this tells us is that if you are eating a big carb heavy breakfast, balancing that with a mid-morning snack, ideally one that is more well balanced, may be the key to improving mood. This study also tested cognitive performance by a memory test of different words. Interestingly, they found that those who ate a large cornflake breakfast scored worse on memory recall, but they did have a greater motivation and attitude towards succeeding on the task. The likely reason why a big cornflake breakfast didn't result in better mood or cognitive performance was because it was just straight up refined carbs. Of course you're gonna feel like when your blood sugars are out of whack. In contrast, research more clearly shows that a protein-rich breakfast can help to improve cognition, memory, and mood. So bottom line, eating a balanced meal filled with hunger-crushing compounds at breakfast can help to elicit a more stable blood sugar response, which in turn may help to improve mood and cognitive performance. And if you do have a big carby breakfast, a balanced snack a few hours later can also help. Finally, let's talk about some general health benefits. So you've probably heard the classic wellness proverb, eat breakfast like a king, lunch like a prince, and dinner like a pauper. And there is a lot of good explanations for this popular adage. Breakfast consumption is pretty much consistently associated with improved diet quality and micronutrient intakes over the course of the day, potentially by helping you kind of like start your day off on the right foot and encouraging you to make more nutritious, balanced choices in subsequent meals. It's kind of like if you run out the door and skip your normal yogurt and berry breakfast and then grab a donut at 11 a.m., it kind of snowballs into a series of less satiating, higher sugar, higher calorie choices from noon to night. So it does make sense that breakfast eaters tend to on average have healthier diets overall. There may also be some benefit to breakfast for reducing the risk of chronic disease. This idea of eating breakfast like a king is largely grounded in research related to our natural circadian rhythm. Basically, our body is naturally more insulin sensitive in the morning and then declines throughout the day. This is why research has found that early time restricted fasting, that is front loading your calories earlier on in the day by eating breakfast and then reducing your meal size at night, helps to increase insulin sensitivity. Some research also suggests that skipping breakfast increases our blood sugars following having lunch and dinner, resulting in lower GLP-1 levels and an impaired insulin response. So while there are potential benefits to intermittent fasting for folks with diabetes or pre-diabetes, particularly due to the associated weight loss, the magic sauce comes from this early time-restricted eating, where you basically have a bigger breakfast and then skip the late night snacks. There may also be some interesting heart health benefits to breakfast too, since some research has linked skipping breakfast to higher risk of cardiovascular disease and increased cholesterol levels. One large prospective study specifically found that eating after 9 a.m. and later than 9 p.m. was associated with higher cardiovascular outcomes compared to eating before 8 a.m. and no later than 8 p.m., especially in women subjects. In fact, each hour of delaying your breakfast was associated with a 6% increase in heart disease risk, and eating your last meal after 9 p.m. was associated with a 28% increase in risk. Intermittent fasting may still be advantageous for reducing cardiovascular disease, especially if it does result in weight loss. But again, this is particularly when the eating window starts and ends earlier on and when it encourages a healthy weight. So to wrap up, you can easily make a case for breakfast or fasting depending on your goal. Generally speaking though, I would say that the benefits of breakfast outweigh the benefits of skipping breakfast for most people. Though that analysis will ultimately come down to your goals, how much you're eating total, and what you're eating in that morning meal. And while I'm not going to go into the body of literature on the types of breakfast and their impacts, as you can probably guess, a balanced breakfast, specifically rich in protein and fiber and lower in refined carbs, is ideal to help with weight management, blood sugar regulation, mood, cognitive performance, and more. My professional recommendation when it comes to breakfast is if it's not broken, don't fix it. If you're used to eating breakfast and you like it, trying to muscle yourself into a strict fasting routine will likely backfire. And if you hate breakfast and you find yourself more sharp or energized without it, don't force yourself to add another meal. But I would love to hear your thoughts below if you are team breakfast or fast. And if you're looking for some balanced breakfast ideas, definitely leave me a comment below and I will consider that for an upcoming video. Also, don't forget to check out my description for a link to my new 2-in-1 probiotic protein powder, which makes for a great blood sugar balancing breakfast edition. And I will see you next time on Abby's Kitchen. Bye!